Good morning, everybody. Today my talk is going to be on the sustainability of innovation. This topic came to me as I was reading Donald Clark's blog a few weeks ago, and it really stood out just how sometimes we think that throwing money at education seems to solve everything, as in money is the solution to everything. I don't agree with this, and the reason for that I'm going to demonstrate throughout my presentation. So as I made reference to Donald Clark's blog, this is one of the quotes that he gave. And this is when he went to a monastery in an African country, and what he said about his experience there. So as it says, "The sad thing was the awful national textbook they were using, written, it seems, with the intent to prevent you learning English. An awful, grammar-laden affair full of sentences no real English speaker would ever utter." So I'm sure we're thinking, that's fine, that's great, if that's the best they had. If that's the best that they could provide for their community, then they're doing their best. We know how important English is in the worldwide organization of economics, of learning, so they're trying their best. However, as we can see from the next comment, this isn't the case. So Donald Clark later on in that paragraph says, "Then a shock. In a room next to the open classroom was a row of computer screens, all still wrapped in the plastic they had arrived in, covered in dust." So obviously they had been provided with computers. This monastery in an African country had been given computers by what I'd assume is a first world country. However, they didn't have electricity. So why did a first world country think, I know, I'll help them by giving them computers if they haven't got electricity in the first place? So they have this problem with giving the latest innovation to a country, but not supporting that innovation with the necessary means. I think it's important to mention also at this time that technology is not bad. I'm not saying that technology is evil, and it prevents education from occurring. But what I am saying is that we need to be careful with the technology that we give, and more genuine about how we provide it, and more careful about the things that we give ultimately. Thank you. Okay, so as it says here, I believe also that this isn't just a problem that we face in third world countries. We also have this issue in this country. As seen here, the current budget for 2014 is £88.6 billion. Now that's a lot of money. This is for teaching as a whole, for what we buy in the schools, for everything for that 1 year. However, does anyone here really know what £88.6 billion looks like? If we contrast this, you can buy 2,331,578.94 Porsche Boxsters with that amount of money. So what are we spending it on? Obviously we're helping pay for teachers. We're helping provide the necessary means that we need so that students can be taught properly. But is it all just spent on teachers' budgets, on keeping the schools together, or are we spending it on innovation that maybe isn't the most productive, such as the following: smartboards, clickers, 3D projectors? What are the purposes of these? What's the purpose of a clicker? Is it so that we can all click out of a multiple choice, and as long as 80% get the correct answer, the other 20% don't matter? And of that 80% that got the correct answer, the 30% that guessed out of the 4 letters didn't really know the answer, they just assumed that one of the answers would be correct. So here we have this issue once again of innovation in a first world country throughout the world just being a means of covering up the issue of producing correct education. And also for smartboards, I've never ever seen one used. I just remember teachers drawing on them and getting told off for using the wrong pen on a smartboard, as I'm sure we've all seen. So these are the issues that we have within this country even today, with the use of our budget, with the use of our money going towards the incorrect use of innovation. So what are the solutions? The solutions, I believe, that we could use is money spent on teachers. Let's not buy Porsches. Let's spend our money correctly on teachers. If they decide to buy a Porsche with their budget, it's up to them though. We need to train our teachers better. We need to give them a higher standard to teach with. We need to provide them with smaller classrooms. We all know from Vygotsky's zone of proximal development that giving them a resource that they can interact with, such as a teacher that has a greater amount of knowledge, of understanding, is better for them. So why do we stick 30 students in one classroom with one teacher? It just is not productive in education. For third world countries that maybe don't have the necessary tools at the moment, don't provide them with computers without electricity. If you're going to give them a computer, make sure that they have a plug socket first. That would be an ideal thing. Okay, now there are issues with this. We all know the solutions. However, next one, thank you. What's the psychological basis behind this? Do you think that any teacher, any government legislator, any parent in a school board has ever thought, why is my son, why is my daughter one of 30 students in a classroom? This isn't a good idea. Have they had that idea in their head before? I think we've all had that idea. So what happens when they have that idea? Well, according to the trans-theoretical model of change, during the contemplation stage, we think about it and we have an intention and desire to change. This needs to last for about 6 months, and it goes through all of the periods of change that we need to go through until the change has occurred and there's determination of that desire, of that model. So that's the theory behind the change of it. What should happen with education right now? What should be happening with the legislation we've had? Why is this not happening though? According to Bandura's agency theory, we don't like responsibility. We don't like to have a weight placed upon us which we have to bear. So we go home and we think, okay, we don't like our sons, daughters in this 30 classroom setting. However, how much effort am I going to have to put in to change this? How much effort am I going to have to do to change the way that the education system runs at the moment? Then we realize it's too much for us. Maybe we have to make dinners every night. Maybe we have to go to work every day, and it's just too much effort to do that. So we pass our agency off onto a proxy agent, maybe a government organization, maybe a council board. Now that's great. It means that we don't have that responsibility upon us. However, because of that, we adjust our agency to fit in with their desires. Meaning that our agency, the choices, the desires that we have within the education system isn't being fulfilled completely because we're just adjusting our wants and desires there. So this is the issues that we have. However, I do believe there is an ultimate solution. And this ultimate solution involves you. That's a poor picture. It looks really good on the computer screen, but it came out a bit wrong. We are being taught these educational practices now. We're being involved in education in a much more vigorous way at looking at it and criticizing it and finding the solutions. And we're going to finish our degree within the year. And we're seeing that innovation being used at the moment throughout the world isn't effective. That was the purpose of this blog and this talk. But there's many other things that each of you have talked about that we're seeing isn't being done properly. So what we need to do is we need to realize this within our own lives, within the families that we associate with, within our careers, and we need to change those things. We need to be the ones that don't pass our agency off onto other people, but we need to be the ones that take the responsibility upon ourselves. Thank you very much for listening. Are there any questions that anyone has? Go ahead.
Surely the uses of smart boards, I mean, a 3D projector is a bit overkill, but smart boards and collectors, surely that will create innovation. If you have them in the classroom, teachers will use them and innovate new ways to use them to teach better.
I believe that is the case. We are able to use technology more effectively in that means. However, is that a solution to having more teachers? Would the employment of 100 smart boards in the school solve having another teacher to that? I think that technology is beneficial in a way. However, there are more beneficial ways to spend the money. And for the use of one person, one teacher or two teachers being able to know a smart board, how many others are? How many people have been trained on the effective ways of using those technologies?
So, are you effectively saying we shouldn't try new things?
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't try new things.
At one point, smart boards because we won't do ideas.
Yep.
Try them, and when you fail, then.
What I'm saying, and this is a case when I was in Jess Martin's project group, research was going to be done into 3D projectors to see how useful they are in the education system. Now what should happen is that proper research should be done from independent groups to see if it would be beneficial. So before councils of local organisations spend thousands, millions of pounds on employing these into schools and into education institutions, we need to know the psychological, educational benefits that it would have on the students first. And then if we know that it's beneficial, then we should definitely implement them. But if it's going to be a waste of money and our budget could be better spent, then we shouldn't.
When stuff like smart boards first came in, like when we were kids, you even got this, and everyone was like kind of excited about it. Do you reckon that it kind of provides innovation, but only while it's still a novelty?
I believe the novelty does have an effect. If you look at extrinsic motivation, which I think you're making reference to there, so the fact of being able to provide an outside source to motivate someone, such as a 3D projector or a clicker, that's only short-lived, and research has shown that it can have a negative effect if you're only working towards a short-term goal. So I think that there is a novelty effect. However, does that novelty effect justify the amount of money that's spent on it? Go ahead.
When you're talking about innovations, you're focusing a lot on technological innovations.
Yep.
There are a lot of other innovations that we could be doing that aren't technological, that are extremely difficult to implement. And as an example, you know, when you were in your small groups in year one, we used to have a small group leader who would have, you know, these are 2-hour-long blocks where you're trying to, he would prepare PowerPoint slides to stand and give a 2-hour lecture to his small group. Because he couldn't break out of the idea that that was what teaching was all about. And I think, you know, your first example of teaching somewhere in Africa with really poor textbooks and stuff like that, I think that what we have to do is develop a scholarship of learning so that we can think about what we're actually doing. We just had a talk over here 20 minutes ago, and one of the slides said that there was absolutely no evidence that lectures are good at all. There's no evidence to say that there's anything good about them, and yet, how many of you will go to a lecture this week? Or 2 or 3, you know, I mean, and that's, if you look at, you know, your poor second years, you're through that now, but in your poor second years, it's just 300 lectures a week. And there's absolutely no evidence that that's an effective way to teach at all.
Yeah.
I think the innovations have to be much more basic than technology.
Yeah. And I believe that we throw money at a solution just to plaster the issue when we don't look, as you were saying, at the actual problems.
You mentioned the big 82.7 billion pounds. Can I ask how much of that is down to inflation over the last 10 years?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. That was, I went onto the government website, and that's the budget that they were given. It's about, I believe, a quarter of the total spending of 2014. Okay.
Do you believe like purchase these technology innovations are simply down to the parents, that they see other schools having them, so they believe their child then should go to a school and is based upon what the school can provide technology-wise?
I don't think it's down to the parents. I think that we have a culture at the moment of providing the latest technologies in schools, that we aren't thinking enough about what we're spending our money on. I think the responsibility should be on the councils over the schools, and they're the people that spend the money on the local areas. I believe, however, that parents do have the responsibility within their boards to ask for smaller classroom sizes, to raise the issues that maybe their students are facing. However, we can't put this on the parents at all.
You made the point that some parents can't sort of get involved because of cooking and stuff like that. What about the ones that work in and can't really afford to get involved in child's education?
I think that we all are able to have a voice, whether it's writing a letter, whether it's just being involved in your students' education, helping with homework, just realizing issues that there are. Obviously, we can't all be as vocal as some parents that have more time on their hands. We can all be involved in our students' futures, though, in this. Is there anyone else? Did you have? Go ahead.
Would you say that like private school would be a better testing ground than public school? but then the parents are actually paying for that education, you should have more of a say in paying for it.
Definitely. When it comes to obviously paying for your own education, we should see how it works, and maybe that would be a better testing ground. This is looking generally as a whole at the country, but yeah, private schools would be a great way to look at this, and they would have smaller class sizes already because of that.